And we are back with the pursuit of ownership. We have on somebody who has brought to us an opportunity. I'll kind of let it speak for itself. So Peyton and I, at the end of this, we kind of had a bit of a conversation, and we wanted to make sure it kind of got on record. So collect your thoughts throughout this episode. Have your own sort of opinion about this opportunity, and then you'll get to hear us hash things out. Hope you enjoy. And we are back with the pursuit of ownership. We have yet another practice pre-ownership underwater. How do I still get that wrong? I don't know how many of these we've done.
I honestly don't know.
I should start over, but I'm gonna.
It's kind of a tongue twister.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Thank you very much, anonymous guest. It is kind of a tongue twister. So anyway, we have a dentist on today who is looking at a practice to buy. He sent over some information on it and filled out our analysis spreadsheet. We're just going to be kind of looking over numbers and getting into the nitty gritty details and just kind of seeing how he wants to proceed. So welcome, anonymous guest. It's now time for you to choose your name for today.
Hello. I think I've already preemptively chosen Justin as my
name. So in here in our browser-based recording app, he came in as Justin. And that's a pretty unconventional name because we usually go for like non-normal human names. But I don't want to contest you on this one. So today, we've had on Wolverine, we've had on like Aquaman and Silver Surfer and all kinds of different things. I'm making up the last two, but today we have Justin. So welcome, Justin, to the show. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Glad to be on here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever details you're more than welcome to share, anything you're comfortable with.
Yeah. So I went to dental school 2015 to 2019. So I've been out for like almost 2 years now, a year and a half or so. Been associating since then, and I'm reaching on my 2-year mark, and I am looking for something more.
Okay. When you originally got out of school and have you been in the same associateship for 2 years, or has it been kind of popping around? Okay. Did you originally know that you were going to be eventually getting into practice ownership? I mean, what was your kind of thought process? What brought you to this point of wanting something new?
Yeah, I think I always knew that I wanted to own my own practice.
Okay.
I used associateships as like my own like version of residency, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the end goal was to always own my own thing. So
okay, so you say that you've been using associateships as a pseudo residency, which I like very much. What were you looking to get out of this associateship, and what did you get out of it?
Okay, so I really wanted to learn as much as possible in terms of clinically.
Okay.
Graduating out of dental school, I didn't feel like I knew that much. The number of crowns I was doing in dental school, and
mm-hmm.
The few number of root canals I was doing. And so during the during the associateship,
mm-hmm.
my mentor, he taught me quite a few things. He taught me implants, so that's good.
Cool.
And one of the biggest things I think I got out of an associateship that I couldn't have gotten out of residency is the business side of owning a practice.
Really?
Yeah. Just like there were a lot of times where I was the only one in the practice, and I would have to ask questions like front desk, like what's the deal with the insurance? What's our goal for today? Things like that. I was running morning huddles and stuff. So
cool. So have you been operating the practice on your own some days, or is the owner doc usually there? Or
yeah, the owner doc, he initially had started coming like 2 days a week to mentor, and then
wow.
And then eventually he just kind of phased out. He was like, "Dude, you're good enough. You're on your own."
Really?
I was like, okay.
Wow.
And then he's starting to come back. He's, I think, bringing on an associate soon. So he's coming back another 1 day a week, just to kind of get things transitioned.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious about this. I hate to be kind of pressing on the associateship aspect of things, but
yeah, no problem.
I'm a D4 and I'm got a bunch of classmates that are graduating about a month and a half, and I've had a few people come to me and kind of ask for advice and stuff. And honestly, I don't think a whole lot about associateships, but I've heard of some pretty good opportunities that people have found where they've gotten that sort of mentorship that you're talking about. I've heard of for every one of those, there's been about 10 others where they were promised something like that and it didn't come to fruition at all, and they ended up getting kind of
Right.
frustrated and feeling like they wasted their time. So how did you kind of come across that opportunity and take advantage of it and find yourself within 2 years in this place that you feel like you're ready to own a practice?
Well, it's a funny story. The way I got this associateship, so I was on my way to graduating. I was like a month out, and I still hadn't found a job. And I was just looking on like Glassdoor, Indeed,
Yeah.
your traditional websites.
Yep.
And I had a friend. So I was living during that time, and I
Okay.
had a buddy in North, and he goes, I was visiting him, and he was like, "Dude, you know what? You should see if there's any jobs up here." And randomly, um, I just randomly applied for one. Showed up on a Sunday, Saturday night. We went out drinking. Showed up Sunday morning, kind of hungover.
Oh man.
he, was, he wanted to see me on a Sunday morning, so
That's
I made it
strategic. Yeah.
there. Yeah, we got up late. It was like we were bussing for time there, and made it there. And the next day, he was like, "Yeah, we'd like to have you on board," and that's how I got the associateship.
Okay, so whenever my classmates come to me about how they can find really good beneficial associateships, I'll tell them go get really schwasty on a Saturday night, meet a dentist Sunday morning whom you've never met before or have no knowledge of, and then that's going to be your person.
There you
Um,
go. I
Great.
think some of it had to do with that residual liquid courage in my
Yeah,
blood.
they're honestly, my classmates are so much more ready than they know. I think they're well practiced in some of that stuff. I love those people. So yeah, they're going to find associateships just fine based off of Justin's experiences. So that's awesome, man. I joke, but I really like that you've had a good time in your first job out of school. Honestly, that's really more the exception than the rule. So I think it's great that
Yeah,
you've got
I
some.
mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that I wish were better and
Okay,
could have been better during the associateship. It
sure.
wasn't some like amazing, perfect opportunity. There were some downsides and there were some bad days here and there. So
Yeah, but at least you've kind of gotten to experience that modality of being the sole
right.
provider in the practice and managing
Oh
that team
yeah.
and stuff. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
fantastic. You've already kind of worn that hat, so that's awesome. And is this? I mean, so you've learned a bunch of value added procedures, and you've been this sole provider. Is that something you're kind of trying to reinvent in this practice that you're looking to buy? You're looking to be a solo owner that's doing all kinds of different procedures, or what's kind of your approach, and what are you looking for?
I think initially, in the beginning, after the transition is made, I'd probably have to be a solo for a while, unless there is a way to kind of bring on someone else pretty quickly. I think the end goal is not to be solo. I'd prefer to have
Really?
kind of like a group setting. Yeah.
So why do you feel then that there needs to be this transitional phase of you being a solo dentist?
I think it just comes down to the numbers. I don't think the numbers right now, right off the bat, could support another dentist.
Well, with the opportunity that you have.
Oh, with my current
Yeah,
associateship.
no. So sorry, I should have given a little bit more context to that question. So without even approaching the opportunity that you brought today, in in this blue sky perfect world where you have this vision of your
Oh,
ideal
gotcha.
practice, what does that look like? And it seems like you've kind of alluded to that as being sort of more group practice type modality.
Yeah, group practice.
Okay.
I'd hate to say more of like a DSO style, but I
Okay.
have noticed that like a DSO style kind of fits like what I would envision, my
Mhm.
10-year future to be.
Can you kind of elaborate on what you mean by that, the DSO style aspect?
Yeah, so you know, after having practiced for 2 years and having seen both sides of like the business and clinical aspects, I really do enjoy the business side of it. Clinical, don't get me wrong, I love the clinical side, but um, I I don't see myself doing that like just clinical,
Yeah.
nonstop, and then have to come home and do business side afterwards.
Hmm. Yeah.
So um, when I take a look at DSO models, um, their models for success are kind of really in line with like what I think is a great um, model for like even if you were to own just a couple practices,
Hmm.
a multi-practice ownership with having each one being a group practice, having multiple doctors in there, and yeah,
Yeah. So do you kind of see yourself, being an absentee owner of an office, several offices, or are you sort of working within an office and having other providers? How does that look for you?
yeah, I would say absentee.
Okay.
Maybe do a couple of days in one of the practices.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be your ideal timeline for getting to that point? Like
uh,
tomorrow,
yeah, right.
ideally
As soon as
yesterday?
possible.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
as fast as I can do it. It's
Okay. Okay.
it's 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 learning how to do it that takes the time. So
So, okay, well, I'll propose it to you this way. So, if you were to find an opportunity that would make that possible, in the very near future, is that what would be the ideal opportunity for you then?
yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. Peyton, do you have anything to add?
No, I think those are all good thoughts. Just diving a little bit deeper into, what he's looking for an opportunity and how we can kind of view this opportunity that he has brought going forward.
That's a good point. So, one thing before we get into the financials themselves, so how did you come across this opportunity? How much looking have you been doing, and how have you been going about it?
Yeah, so in terms of this opportunity, I've been just looking on like websites, broker sites. I was contacting some reps. Um, one thing I have just recently started to listening to you guys' podcast, and one thing that never crossed my mind was mailers. But
Really? Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
I found this one off of Dentaltown. There was a posting
Okay.
by a broker on Dentaltown. So
Nice. Okay. Very
yeah,
well. And how long have you been looking?
since August ish.
Okay,
Yeah,
so about 7 months or something like that.
yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's a good little amount of time, and knowing what. Let me ask you this. So we've kind of talked about what your ideal vision is. You're looking to be an absentee owner as soon as possible. How did that affect what sort of offices you were looking for? Like, what was your sort of search criteria as you were looking for offices?
I was, you know, I think I was looking for a practice. I think I initially went into it with the wrong mindset, right? I had initially got into it like, okay, let's find a cheap, like underperforming office that we could just throw some, good systems in there, get everything in line, do some um, reforming and get it up to. I guess it was like an equity building opportunity, is the way I saw it, right?
Yes. No, I understand.
and
Yeah.
and not have the doctor like be the heavy producer of the
Yeah.
office. Yeah.
That's fairly sound thinking, I think. What in terms of like op number and revenue and stuff, what did you kind of have some general ideas about
Oh
that?
yeah, I had a minimum criteria of at least 6 ops.
Good.
I didn't have a minimum criteria for like production.
Okay.
Um,
Right, because you
and
were kind of looking for an underperforming office to begin with.
right, right.
Yep.
And it's funny because I listened to you guys' podcast and you guys had mentioned like, oh, you want to buy something that's kind of already performing, right? So I hadn't started really listening to your podcast until recently, and I heard that,
Okay.
and I was like, oh crap.
Well, it's all about growth strategy, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think if we're giving like one size fits all advice, it actually doesn't really fit anybody. So,
right.
that we kind of have gone. I don't want to say back and forth, but we have to contextualize, what like an ideal opportunity looks like, and that's all always specific to, what it is that a particular buyer wants to do, and what their timeline looks like, and how they want to be spending their days. They design it around their own, sort of ideal lifestyle, and I think that. So I'm sorry, we may have already covered this. So in wanting to be an absentee owner, were you also looking and doing the DSO style? Were you looking at doing multiple practices?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think
Okay.
the angle. I think I would want at least five within the next 5 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then actually, I don't think that's a bad angle at all. If you
Okay.
listen, yeah, if you listen to the episode that we did with Lauren Israelson some time ago, and we actually talked to him fairly recently. It came out, I think this week as we're recording. The first part of it, and there's going to be another part next week. That was his growth strategy coming out of school, was finding underperforming offices,
Oh,
doing the
okay.
whole value added thing. So no, you're not. I don't think you're off base at all. It
Okay,
depends
cool.
on what it is that you're looking for exactly. I think the advice that you would come across with regards to coming into an office that's already performing but not super performing is more like a really good beefy single location group practice, as
Oh,
opposed to
gotcha.
trying to do the multiple location thing. So you're not. I don't think you're off base on that at all, actually.
Yeah.
So no, you can give yourself a little more credit for that. Peyton, would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, cool. So let's get into it then. We kind of know what you're wanting to do and what you're looking for, and so let's see what you got. Kind of tell us a little bit about this office.
Yeah. So some basic things. Practice is 2,600 square feet. It's 7 ops, and it's plumbed for an eighth,
It's
but they
lean.
use the eighth one as a closet.
Yeah,
I think they wanted to use it as storage. Yeah.
Okay,
that's a good efficient build there.
that's a very
Yeah.
efficient build out. Yeah, I'm
Here's
impressed.
the here's the here's the catch of those. So it's on a retail spot, prime retail spot, and like a retail plaza. The
Okay,
rent is pretty high. It's close to 11 grand a month. So
yeah. Is the so that I take it it's not for sale? Then you're just going to be renting it out for some time.
yeah, it's the whole plaza is owned by like one company.
Yeah, so I'm kind of looking at this on a percentage basis, based on the financials you sent me. So you said the rent is 11K per month.
Yeah, 10 to 11 as of right now.
Yeah, and so the yeah, okay, so the production that they did, I guess, last year, based on the financials you sent over, was somewhere in the realm of 604K
Yeah, yeah.
adjusted, and
So it's
then
about 20%.
comes out 20%. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Right. So
Yeah.
when I brought this practice idea
Yeah.
to some people, they were like, "Dude, you're crazy. Don't do
Yeah.
this." Right?
Yeah.
But in reality, I figured this practice is actually supposed to be doing more than 600.
hmm Oh,
So,
absolutely. I mean, you double it and then you half that percentage, right?
right.
So I'm not balking at that completely, because you're right. This is a 7 op practice that's doing 600K. Like that, this is an underperforming office, right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So I when I first look at this and I see there's like 26% staff costs, I see 20% facility expenses, that's 46% fixed expenses. Usually that's a number we balk at, but not necessarily when you have an office that's underperforming. And so then the question becomes, why is it underperforming? What's going on with that? So what kind
hmm
of diagnostics have you done there?
Yeah. So, the seller started that practice in '93. He's retiring. He's got some health issues, and so he's just cut back. Um, he's really good friends with his hygienist, and I got in contact with her, and she says that he's just kind of checked out. So unfortunately, I think it would have been a good idea for him to sell it like when it was at its peak, but I think he missed
Yeah.
that turn. So
Yeah. Well, he's underdiagnosing.
yeah,
So there's a 36% hygiene production ratio, which is, there's a lot being left on the table there,
yeah.
for sure. So is there just a lot being referred out, or do you know maybe why that is?
Oh, 100%. So
Okay.
he doesn't do. I think he did a couple, like a handful of extractions, but everything else, like he doesn't do any endo, any oral surgery, maybe a couple of extractions, and then no implants.
Mhm.
Um, Perio, I think they do a lot of bloody prophies. So
Bloody trophies. Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Oh,
A sneaking
man.
suspicion.
Oh,
yeah,
I've
I mean,
never,
I'm looking at the Perio production, and I'm like, how are they not doing any SRPs?
yeah.
This. So
Yeah, no, I'm gonna start saying that now. Bloody trophies. That's brilliant.
Wait, Tyler, have you never heard that before?
No. I mean, I
What?
obviously know what it is. I've just never referred to it that way. They've probably
Oh my
said it on the
gosh.
show. That just exposes me as someone that doesn't listen enough. Um,
I actually do have a question though about back to the the rent and the space that you're in. So as we stated, like where the production sits now, it's pretty high. Do you feel like the place that this office is located warrants that high of a rent? Like, do you have good
Question.
visibility? Is it a high traffic area?
It's I guess not as high traffic since there's less foot traffic because of COVID, but I think it is a high traffic area. The visibility is pretty good once you get into the plaza. You know, they have the plaza signage where they stack all these signs up onto this big plaza sign.
Mhm.
But once you turn into that plaza area, it's like right there. So
Yeah. Quick question. So these numbers, did they come from last year, like
no, it
2020
came from
or?
2020. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I mean, this is I mean, like COVID-ish numbers, right? So like,
Those are COVID numbers, yeah.
right. Okay. And so like the new patients I'm seeing are 7 new patients per month.
That's average for the past 3 years.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So he does zero marketing. That's another important thing to know.
Yeah, that's another thing I see. No marketing at all. Okay. Well, I mean, that's encouraging, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So let me just kind of get a summary from you about the low-hanging fruit that you have identified here. The sort of the pros and cons that you have assessed.
So the pros, I think, you know, one thing that was big for me was the number of ops, right? Because if my goal is
Yep.
to have a group style, I was looking to kind of future proof it and have it already set up for that.
Mhm.
With the potential to add one more, I think that is like a great opportunity in the area I live in. So where I live, it's so like practices sell like hotcakes. I don't know why. Like
Yeah.
I've seen practices on sites for like 3 days and they're gone.
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the world? But
Yeah.
and relative to the size, like I haven't seen any practice of this size that's being listed for this price. So
I understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
That
makes it sound
definitely
more
is
opportune.
that definitely is one thing that is very true as of late, is that if there's a good practice for sale, it's going to go quick. And I think that's where it comes down to really knowing what you want. And as soon as you see it, you just have to be ready to pull the trigger, because if you don't, then someone else will.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we say good practices, right? Like a good practice is really beauty's only skin deep, right? So it depends on exactly what you're looking for, and I think that Justin here is looking for something kind of in particular that may not necessarily look like a great practice to everybody, but it just kind of depends on what your particular taste and plan for it is. And I'm seeing some things that are making it more appealing that might not make it appealing to everybody. So
Oh yeah,
Justin, you're about to say something there.
yeah. So I will tell you that uh, this practice has been on the market for a while. uh,
Yeah. So yeah, what's up with that?
it's he's had a hard time selling it because um the numbers the practice as of right now, the way he reported it and through the broker, it doesn't cash flow after he pays himself and his overhead. So
Mm-hmm.
that with the insane amount of rent, it's I think it scares a lot of people off.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes sense.
And none of the banks said yes to this. So I have to get creative with that.
Really, with lending,
Yeah.
what were some of
It's
the
tough.
reasons that they gave you for it? Just the lack of cash flow?
Yeah. Well, in fact, they factor in a lot of stuff. Being a newish dentist, they're looking at like liquidity,
Mhm.
work
Yeah,
history,
sure.
um, and then they're looking at the practice. It's like 80, I would say 80% the practice. They're looking at cash flow, you know, past 3 years
Yeah.
history. So
The banks that you were talking to, were these like typically dental lenders or
they were all dental lenders.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I can drop names, but they were all dental lenders, and they all said no.
Well, I mean, I don't mind if you drop their names. They publicize their names a good bit. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. Because if I'm looking at this and I know your track record for what you're able to produce and the sort of things that you have to add. I mean, say you were someone that was pursuant to just being a solo dentist, and you just go in there with your oral surgery skills, your implant skills. I don't know if you didn't say endo, but
Yep.
like you are a go getter, and I have to assume you'd be doing better than a 36% hygiene ratio. I
Yeah.
mean, this would be a relatively easy play for you, making this into a what is it, productive solo practice, right? Like, I mean, it's well within the means of doing that
hmm
in fairly short order, just by added procedures, just internal growth.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
think
surprised no one else saw that.
yeah, that's the big thing though. Um, Banks don't look at projections.
Hmm.
Period.
Even
They
dental
don't.
lenders, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
dental lenders they don't care because I think what they do is they put some numbers into a computer and it spits out a yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
But
right.
they're
You're
very
absolutely right.
risk averse. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. Especially right now. Okay.
I,
Have you, Peyton?
I was going to say, I do have one more question. So, with regards to the area that this practice is located, would you say it's an area just as far as, population and demographics? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Is it kind of a
Okay.
stable area? What's that look like?
it's I would say stable, if not very slightly growing. It's
Okay.
because of how densely populated it is.
Okay.
Um,
So, would you describe it as urban, metro, or more suburban, or even rural?
it's like a more urban type. I wouldn't say like downtown type urban, but it's like a 15-minute drive out over that kind of
Okay.
setting. Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, And then also, yeah, I really think the biggest and most important thing to you, if you do decide to go through with this practice, is going to be your plan and what you're going to do as soon as you get in there. Because, I mean, clearly right now, with what he's doing and what the practice is producing, something's not working. So I really think that that growth strategy is going to be very important very early in the game. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a less than ideal situation.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because the way I found my last ditch effort to get lending was through the SBA.
Yeah.
And to get lending from the SBA, you have to do a business plan.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And so you do analysis, you put in there like what you're gonna do, like you put in projections,
Yeah.
and you put in proposals as in I'm going to place implants, I'm going to do endo.
Hmm.
The current seller does none of these, blah blah blah. Um, and just adding the procedures, I think, and then making sure that the getting some marketing in there, getting some advertising. I think that the practice has 2 Google reviews over the past 30 years. So,
Wow.
um,
Definitely some room for improvement there.
yeah, I think there's a lot of like just practical, modern like things that we can just put in there, and just it should. I feel like it guarantees growth, right? But
Yeah.
got
I
to
mean,
be careful.
no, I don't really disagree with you. Have you entertained the possibility of seller financing?
That's I have. So, the seller he wanted. So am I allowed to? I guess I'll just drop the practice number. So the practice was listed for 350, right?
Hmm.
And he wanted 225 down to do seller's
What?
finance, and I was like,
That's
that's not seller's financing, man.
Yeah, what the heck?
not really
Yeah,
getting
so
the concept. Yeah, yeah.
I picked his brain, and it turns out that he's a little too early to touch his retirement money, and he wanted some money to live on before he could do that. So
Okay.
Gotcha.
yeah,
Well, beggars and
Yeah.
choosers. I mean, his practice has been on the market for quite some time, right? And then he's
yeah,
stiffing you on that. I mean, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I think this is a perfectly fine opportunity for what you're looking for. I think that the value add is there, the capacity is there. I mean, there is a question of what you could do with this new patient rate, but with nothing being spent on marketing and 2 Google reviews, I mean, there's plenty of rocks to turn over there. And I see a pretty obvious path towards outpacing this overhead. I mean, it's just a very obviously underperforming practice. You get a couple hygienists in there. You have a dentist that's doing a little more, even a little bit of specialty work, and you're eating, and you got a cash flowing office. I think. I'm just like I think really what it comes down to is like the practicalities of just getting financed and being able to pay for this practice. And that's the rub here, because it's like you found this opportunity and you have a decent path, and it is relatively coordinate with what you want to do, I think. But the no one's throwing money at you, and that's just such a that's a bear. So what have your thoughts on that been? Like how have you kind of planned to tackle this?
Yeah, I mean, just getting the financing has been so tough. So I found this practice in like late September,
Yeah.
and I've talked to 6 banks, and each bank you talk to, you have to wait weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to wait weeks. So just I got approval yesterday from the SBA. So it's taken over 6 months just to get that approval.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but I think that it was a good opportunity, but I have run this by. I even posted about it on Dental Town, and people were just like, I don't know what it is about Dental Town, but they were just like, dude, you're crazy. Rent is high. Dude, those numbers and that rent, hell no. It's like, it, I,
Yeah.
it,
Downtown is brutal.
it gets to your brain. It gets to
Yeah.
you. I was like,
Um,
I started doubting myself. I was like, oh my God, am I like, that's a good
look,
idea? Like, I don't know.
you know, Dental Town is like the original seed from which many podcasts have ultimately, can trace their lineage, and I have to pay my respects to that, but it's just not where I would go for this type of advice, to be honest.
Okay.
Because I mean, you just have to, unless you just have a very particular sieve that can sort of filter through all the negativity and people that just frankly don't really know what they're talking about or understand what it is you're trying to do. Um, I yeah, no, I think that you have a lot more vision and understanding of how this works than a lot of the people that were probably commenting on that thread. Um, have you, so just to kind of circle back to financing, have you looked into Lendeavor, well, formerly known as Lendeavor, now currently known as Provide? Have you talked to them yet?
Yeah, I did. They said no.
They weren't feeling it.
They, it's funny because they just like everything looks good, everything looks great, and then up until that phone call, it was. I mean, that's what they made it sound like it was going to go through, and then I just get a phone call, and it's like they said no. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, what? So it's like the practice doesn't flow.
Yeah.
So
What is, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just there's certain problems that can be turned around very, expeditiously, right? And then there's other problems that can take some time. Like, if this were an issue of like needing to get new patients in the practice and having to like, grow it externally, obviously that there is a lag time associated with that. But this is something that like, if a provider comes in there and they're just doing the dentistry that's currently there, that's being referred out. I mean, this can be flipped literally effective immediately as soon as they walk in the door. This is a more profitable practice. It's a different practice when a different provider walks into it. When you've got a 36% hygiene production ratio, um, and I wish somebody would be seeing that for you.
yeah, I think flip is a good word.
Yeah, no, it is. Hmm. Okay, so what? Yeah, I mean, it's Peyton. You look like you have something to say, actually.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, so, uh, you know, I definitely think the banks not lending on it is indicative of, I would say like objective risk. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into risk,
Sure.
as far as, the specific person that's buying it, a bunch of different external and internal factors. Um, if you were able to get lending, I definitely feel like you could turn it around. But at the same time, I do feel like this could be a more stressful path to what you want, then something else might be.
Right. Yeah, I have entertained the thought ever since I started listening to you guys' podcast. I was like, I mean, is this the path of least resistance, right? And
Yeah, exactly. And
and
Great point, Peyton.
I was gonna say too, like, I know you said you haven't actually sent mailers yet. Is that correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, this doesn't feel like a good enough opportunity to not send mailers. Like, I feel like I would want to send mailers, make sure I've exhausted all my options, and if this is still what's left, then see if you can make it work. But
And it's not going anywhere, right? So like,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
waiting for you. Yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
Yeah.
How does that sit with you, Justin?
I it here's the thing. Okay, so after I got the letter of intent in, there's actually been a lot of questions around it. So the interest has kind of gone up. I don't know why. I think there were the seller told me there's some people waiting in line to ask about this practice, and I'm like, what?
Dude, I
So
don't believe that for a second. I'm sorry. Maybe there is, but I don't know.
well,
I'm not buying it.
oh, I know for a fact there is, because I know the doctor that actually said, "Hey, I want to give you an offer," and I was like,
Yeah.
and he turned her down because he's talking to me. So,
Well, I mean,
but regardless, mailers I think is a great idea. It never crossed my mind,
mhm.
snail mail. I mean, come on.
It's real, man.
No, it's surprising, right?
It's real stuff, man. It will turn something up. I mean, ultimately, it's it'd be one thing if you already had the financing in hand and that was going to work.
Yeah.
But currently, it's kind of like it's those birds are in the bush.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of looking for other opportunities, and I mean I like your selection criteria as they are. I think
Mhm.
there are other types of opportunities that will work better for you too, that are already cash flowing, that might make it a little bit more expedient for you to get financing. Obviously, that would be an ideal. I mean, this is the sort of thing that like someone who already had a more established, DSO type structure could scoop up relatively
Yeah.
easily. It's harder when you're someone that's trying to get something off the ground.
Yeah.
And seller financing is almost invariably how that gets started. That's the same. That was the deal with Lauren Israelson. He was able to make that work. So
Yeah.
unless you can create some terms that the dentist would be a little bit more amenable to, and just help the dentist understand, like, I do not have this to put down for you right now.
Was that the podcast where he ended up buying two?
Mhm.
Yeah, because the doctor had been gotten sick or something. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's how a lot of those end up working, is
Yeah.
with young dentists or people even coming out of school, which is rare, but it happens. You have the seller carrying the note for a time, and so if they're not willing to do that, and you're not willing to get, not able to get financing elsewhere, it's just that's just not it's just not necessarily an opportunity if you can't buy it at that time, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think you won't be destitute if this practice doesn't work out. Ultimately, you have other things that you can do, other things in your power to find other opportunities, and ones that will, be a little bit more friendly and more attractive for the sort of risk averse dental lenders currently.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just kind of where my assessment is that's just kind of where you stand right now, and
Okay. Cool.
you play this the best you can. But usually when people come on, they're kind of looking for like a yes or no with things, and we rarely ever really give that. I mean, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
In this case, it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, you kind of
Oh,
already knew where you stood with it, right?
well, here's the thing. I really wanted to make it work, but there's just part of me that was like, I don't know if I can, because I've
Oh,
never had my own practice. And
oh,
so
yeah,
I think
okay,
part of me was just
okay.
like searching for a yes from someone.
Oh, dude, like, okay, well, if you need any validation, like, I think you were more than prepared to own a dental practice. I mean,
Oh, okay.
what you're feeling is, I mean, that's just endemic to anyone that's looking to purchase their first practice. I mean, there's always that thought of like, who do I think I am? How do I know I
Yeah.
can do this? I think you're very well equipped to do that. I don't have any questions about that. I mean, that just comes with the process, and that's part of what makes it fun, and part of what is going to give you the satisfaction of having bought one once you do it. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think one of a piece of me was telling me myself that it's just like, hey, you're young.
Mhm.
It's risky, but at least you're at a point where it's you could take that risk
Mhm.
and just give it a shot. Because that's what an investment is. Take a risk.
Yeah,
So
dude. Hey, man, that's the name of the game. You're exactly right. And in the sort of model that you're looking at, I mean, there you have to have an appetite for risk.
yeah,
And I think pivoting that anxiety into something that is exciting for you and accepting the possibility of failure and knowing that that doesn't necessarily mean anything about you and it's not going to ruin your life is just that's just an area of growth that we all have to undertake. And
yeah,
there's if there's not risk inherent in opportunity, then it's not really that much of an opportunity. So press on, and I want to see anything else that drums up for you. Let's talk about it. Let's try and figure out the right solution for you, because I want to see you getting off the ground with this, and I think you're more than ready.
cool. I mean, it feels good to hear that from you guys. So,
Well, I'm flattered that our word carries any weight. I should hope that it carries more weight than all those naysayers on Dental Town.
the keyboard warriors.
But yeah, seriously, Justin. So uh, thank you so much for bringing this forward, and we're going to help you any way we can on the back end. As soon as we find something that is going to be a little bit more amenable to financing. If there's anything we can do to help out with that, we certainly will, and we'll kind of get you connected with our team on that. But is there anything else that you wanted us to address before we kind of wrap up here?
No, I mean, I guess that touches everything. I really appreciate you guys having me on,
For
and
sure.
you guys are a pretty big deal, believe it or not. And so the fact that I'm even talking to you guys right now, it's pretty cool.
Oh
So
man.
I appreciate it.
I'd say we're a medium-sized deal at best.
Well, Justin, that means a lot to me. I remember listening to these podcasts and listening to share practices in particular before I got involved with it, and I used to think, wow, these guys are a really big deal. But honestly, like we're a lot more similar than our audience than our audience actually believes.
Yeah,
We're all in this together, and we all have the same sort of insecurities and ambitions, and all we try to do is just help people out and try to provide some answers for the same questions that we've had at different times. So yeah, I really appreciate though. That
yeah,
means a lot.
no problem. Of course.
Yeah. All right, Justin. So we're gonna sign off here again. Thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate your story, and we're gonna keep following it.
Yeah, all right. Appreciate it. Bye bye.
All right, everybody. I hope you formed your own opinions about this sort of opportunity. Personally, I was kind of on the fence about some things, but I was kind of willing to give it a green light under certain circumstances. But the first thing that Peyton said when we got off was, "I would not touch this with a 10-foot pole." Peyton, tell us about
Well, first off, you opened up the intro and you said we were having a conversation. I feel like it was not a conversation. It was a very heated
it. It was
argument.
a
No, I'm just kidding.
debate.
It
It
wasn't that bad.
was if we
It
were in
was a debate,
person, it
yes,
would have been
precisely.
physical.
It was, but since it wasn't, it was very civil. Yeah, we were both sitting points. But yes, like you were saying, I don't. To me, when you have an opportunity where there is no one that will give you lending, that that
I
just
should tell you
doesn't.
something, right?
It really doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't give me a good first
yeah.
impression, and just with kind of how he stated where the overhead
Mhm.
was, it just really doesn't sound like there's a lot of
Mhm.
wiggle room at the beginning at all. And another thing that he said after is the practice is paper charts. So I mean, you were kind of saying like it's a one-time thing, like you fix it and then it's done. But when you're already struggling for cash at the
Mhm.
beginning because there's not a whole lot of cash flow, and then let's say you want to try to switch over from paper charts to digital, like that's just
Mhm.
another speed bump. I don't
So
know. To me, it just there was a lot of things that were
here's something
going
I
on.
wish I would have said to Justin, and he'll hear it on this episode. Um, I was not saying it'd be a really sweet first year, right? Like it'd be a pretty sucky first year. Like it wouldn't be great. There wouldn't be
Yeah.
great cash flow. He'd be working really hard to get anything more than what he already gets with his associateship. On the back end, it stands to be something better, right? So it's like it's a choice of like, am I okay with struggling for a year with an opportunity that could be something in say 9 months to a year? It could be good, but I'll have some issues to begin with, right? Like you mentioned paper charts. Like, okay, so one thing about paper charts is like very annoying to get that converted into digital. it sucks. And you're working with a team that's worked with paper charts, and now they have to work with digital. And maybe they're a longstanding staff, maybe they're not super, affluent with technology, maybe they're not really ready for that. And so you're gonna have to be walking through that, and that's a pain for sure. But it also means that whoever the owner is there has no idea what's going on in the practice, right? Like there's no metrics, there's no PBN, there's no dental intel, there's no there's another one I can't remember, divergent dental. There's no sort of like metrics attached to this at all, right? That's a low hanging fruit. That's something you can do, right? There's a lot being referred out here. It's a 36% hygiene production ratio. There's so much on the table that Justin would have been able to do immediately. And there's no marketing being spent at all. So like that's something that after let's say 6 to 9 months or so, you kind of see like a measurable growth in the practice with like more existing patients. You've added a hygienist, like there's more diagnosis going on, and you're actually doing something about that diagnosis. Like there are things that can be done within this practice to make it profitable and get it above that and have that sort of cash flowing going on. And it's just a question of like, how romantic are you with this particular opportunity, right? So I totally get what you're saying though, Peyton, about like this being like quote unquote bad opportunity. But it's more like, I think it's a bad opportunity now, but like it could be a good opportunity later on. How much more are you willing to look? Like, are you trying to do this right now, or can you wait a little bit longer for something that'll be better? And that's where it becomes dealer's choice. And so I think that might be a sort of a bridge between where we're both coming from. And in retrospect, I do think I was being a little bit too warm on this opportunity. I'll say that.
Yes.
I was. And I think that that's just something I tend to do. Like, I think that I don't want to like say no to stuff a lot of times. And I don't want to go in so far that I give people bad advice. But I do like being creative about taking something. This is just sort of like the endodontist that sees a tooth that's like broken off the root and says, no, like we're saving it. Like we're bringing this thing back from the dead.
Exactly.
Like that's, I think that's kind of how I'm getting about these things. But understand that like, in my opinion, like there really are no like awesome, amazing opportunities versus like really, really terrible opportunities. Like it really just depends on what you're bringing to the table, what you want out of it, and what you're going to like get out of like this process, and how are you going to enjoy it? Like, what do you want cash flow? Like, do you have to have cash flow in this first year? Or are you kind of willing to sacrifice a bit and drill into your working capital for something that could be a much bigger value added type thing after that period of time? What's your growth strategy? Like there's just so many other things that work into this, and like that's kind of what I'm trying to highlight. But like at the same time, Peyton's not wrong for saying I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. Like that's also true, right?
Yeah. So. I think I actually kind of gathered my thoughts while you were talking there. I think the reason why I was so averse to this option is just in that price range, and for what it sounds like the cash flow is, like you're in startup territory. Like,
True.
And if you're going to be, taking on a risk like that, like me personally, I would probably just want to build it how I want.
That's a good point.
Granted, no, I think you could probably build a space similar to that size for, let's say 500 and a bank would loan to you. So to me, that kind of feels like fixing a lot of the problems. Yeah, fixing a lot of the problems, and also you're getting what you want. So I don't know. I don't know if he's at all open to a startup, but I think that's just where I was having an issue with it.
I'll tell you why I think that's actually a great point, and I think I will say that you have kind of countered me really well there. So if you're going to like what's great about acquisitions, right? Cash flow. Like why do you do them? So you can have some cash flow, right? And if you're going to go through like this lean period of time where you're trying to, fight against these margins, and like you're trying to grow the practice really aggressively, so you're dumping money into marketing that may not even really be there because you're like not doing great on cash flow. Like why not just do a startup, right? Like you're already going to be lean for at least a year, sometimes two. So yeah, that's a valid argument too. Like that's a totally different way he could go, and he does it the way he wants it from the ground up. He doesn't have to deal with all the inefficiency that's already there. There's not going to be like this issue of like dealing with an existing staff that's like used to doing paper charts for like 20 years. I think it said started in like 1993 or something like that. That's even longer. So yeah, I mean, that's also a valid argument. And with his growth strategy, it probably makes more sense to do something that's a little bit more ready made, and like, it can be cash flowing right off the bat or like really, really soon. And, it's something he can actually get lending on and not be gouged on that. So, point taken there. Absolutely. Like touche. So, I mean, I think this kind of opportunity like really just highlights the fact that like so much of this is buyer specific, and it's not so much opportunity specific. Like things are not intrinsically good or bad. Like it depends on what you're trying to do, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to go through, and so much of that. And, that's why we do so much of like just talking to the listener on the front end of the episode is like trying to figure out where they're coming from and what they might actually be looking for. But having heard your arguments for this, Peyton, I think I'm going to give the point to you on this one. Like I do think that like I want Justin to find a different opportunity for sure.
Yeah,
and I think
and like it's not about like winning or losing or whatever. Yes, like at the end of the day, we just want to find the best opportunity.
What are you talking about?
At the end of the day, we just want to find the best opportunity that makes the best sense long term. And to me, this just feels like making your life harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I think one thing that I got romanced by was the 7-op aspect of it, the value added aspect of it.
Yep.
Trying to scoop up an underperforming practice, but I think maybe it went a little bit too far in the way of underperforming. And these facility expenses are just, I mean, you just be drowning for a while. I mean, 20% facility expenses. I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't think I've ever, granted, I haven't seen a ton of, what people are actually paying for rent, but 11K is pretty high.
Yeah, sure. No, it definitely is. And I one thing that I want us to kind of work on is, how do you quantify like what's on the table to be done internally, right? Like, let's say you have a 40% production ratio. How do you quantify with a given, person that's going to be stepping in that less some, note that's going to be taken on after the financing, right? Like, how do you quantify how much money can be added month over month and how that's going to affect the cash flow, right? Like, that's something we typically don't necessarily do. But I think we could probably look into that. So I think that would be really interesting to kind of be able to figure out and like just attach a number to that. It's be like, okay, you can do implants. Okay, like you can do this and that. But like we don't ultimately know exactly what's being made up of what's being referred out unless we have like a really good production by procedure code report. But no, even then, like you still don't know exactly what's being referred out, right? So like
yeah, acceptance. All
it's just so hard to quantify like how much is being left on the table, and there's a lot being left on the table here. Like I don't want to underestimate the fact that 36% hygiene production ratio, like that is very symptomatic of a patient of a seller that's just like checked out or just never really expanded themselves clinically. So when you have someone that's a go getter like Justin is, it's like, well, there probably is a lot that could be done, right? So yeah, I don't know. A lot of things to be thought about there. This is probably one of the longest outros we've ever done. So I'm kind of interested to get some listeners' thoughts on this. Just kind of vote Tyler or Peyton, who's better. We'll do a poll. Honestly, I think Peyton's going to win this one. I think he has more sense than I do in this case. I think I'm starting to get like I'm starting to have that sort of like hero-dontic aspect of some of these things as I want to make opportunities work. But
regardless, though,
that being said, we had a lot of fun, and I just want to say thanks to Justin for coming on, and I hope we have him on again with a different opportunity, and hopefully one that Peyton's a little bit warmer on. Dude, don't do it to me. That said, I hope you all enjoyed this one. I think this was a good thinker and a good thought exercise for what can be done with different opportunities, even when they don't cash flow so well. It just kind of depends on what that big overarching vision is and how you want to get there. So, all right, I think that's enough for me. So, Peyton, I appreciate you for sticking with me for this 11-minute outro. You probably weren't thinking that's what we were going to get into, but we did.
I live for 11-minute outros.
All right, y'all. See you next week.